The day my husband died started like any other. Alex kissed me goodbye, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder as he headed out for a business trip to Singapore. "I'll call when I land," he promised. "Love you, Sophie." Those were the last words I heard from him. Or so I thought. I'm Sophie Chen, and at 32, I became a widow. At least that's what everyone believed, including me. The call came at 3 a.m. Mark, Alex's best friend and business partner, could barely get the words out through his sobs. The private plane they chartered had gone down somewhere over the Pacific. No survivors found. I remember sliding down the wall, my legs unable to hold me up as the world spun around me. Alex and I had been married for 7 years. We'd been trying for a baby. We had plans, dreams, a future that vanished in an instant. The shock didn't truly wear off until I tried to access our bank accounts the next day. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen," the bank manager said, his face carefully blank. "These accounts were emptied yesterday morning. All transfers were authorized with the correct passwords and authentication." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "That's impossible. My husband, he died yesterday." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "According to our records, Mr. Chen personally authorized these transfers at 9:43 a.m. yesterday, before his scheduled flight." The numbers on the screen swam before my eyes. Our savings, our investments, our retirement accounts, all gone. Over $3 million vanished just hours before the plane went down. I walked out of the bank in a daze, my mind refusing to connect the dots that were becoming clearer with each passing minute. Alex had always handled our finances. He was the successful investment banker, while I taught kindergarten. I trusted him completely. That trust started to crumble as more details emerged. The private plane company had no record of Alex or Mark booking a flight. Our house deed had been quietly transferred to a shell corporation 2 months earlier. Even our safety deposit box had been emptied. "There has to be some mistake," I told the detective assigned to the case. Alex wouldn't. He couldn't. But he could, and he did. As the investigation unfolded, the truth emerged in painful fragments. The plane crash was fiction. Mark wasn't even in the country when he made that tearful call. Phone records showed he was in the Cayman Islands, where millions in cryptocurrency had been moved through untraceable accounts. My husband hadn't died. He orchestrated an elaborate disappearance, taking everything we built together. The worst part was the evidence of planning. Security footage showed Alex making multiple visits to a storage facility in the weeks before his death. Credit card statements revealed small purchases of camping gear, survival supplies, and burner phones. He'd been preparing for months while sleeping beside me every night. Our friends were stunned. "He seems so devoted to you," they said. "You two were perfect together." Were we? Looking back, I started to see the cracks I'd ignored. The late-night phone calls he'd take outside, the business trips that grew more frequent, the way he changed passwords and insisted on handling all our finances. I'd been a fool, blinded by love and trust. The house went into foreclosure. I moved into a tiny apartment, taking only what I could prove I bought with my teaching salary. The life insurance company denied my claim, citing evidence of fraud. Mark disappeared, his phones disconnected, his social media erased. Depression hit hard. I took leave from work, barely able to get out of bed. My sister Grace moved in temporarily, forcing me to eat, to shower, to keep living when all I wanted was to disappear like Alex had. "He's not worth this," she'd say, holding me through the nightmares. "You're stronger than what he did to you." But I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow, scraped empty of everything I thought I knew about love and trust. The students in my kindergarten class noticed the change in their usually cheerful teacher. Their innocent questions, "Why are you sad, Ms. Chen?" would bring me to tears. Months passed in a fog of grief and anger. I went through the motions of living, teaching my class, paying my bills, trying to rebuild some semblance of normalcy. But every night, I'd lie awake wondering where Alex was, what he was doing with our money, whether any part of our marriage had been real. The police investigation stalled. Without a body, they couldn't prove death or fraud. International financial regulations made tracing the money nearly impossible. Alex had planned his escape meticulously, leaving no loose ends. Grace convinced me to start seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in trauma and betrayal. In her quiet office, I began to unravel the threads of my marriage, seeing patterns I'd missed. "He love-bombed you," she explained. The whirlwind romance, the lavish gifts, the constant attention. It was all designed to create deep trust quickly. People like Alex are master manipulators. They study their targets, learning exactly how to make them feel special. I remembered our courtship, how he'd seemed too good to be true, sweeping me off my feet with grand gestures and declarations of love. How quickly he wanted to merge our lives, our finances, our futures. But 7 years, I whispered. Who could pretend for 7 years? Sociopaths can, she said gently. To them, relationships are transactions. They can mimic emotions perfectly while feeling nothing real underneath. The truth was like acid, burning away the last of my illusions. Alex hadn't loved me. I'd been a long con, a cover story, a way to build legitimate wealth he could steal. Our whole marriage had been a carefully constructed lie. 1 year after his death, I filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment. The paperwork felt final, like closing a book I never wanted to read again. I changed my name back to Sophie Lynn, refusing to carry his name any longer. Grace helped me move to a new apartment, one I chose for myself. I started rebuilding, piece by piece. I took financial literacy classes, opened new accounts in my name only, and began to trust my own judgment again. But sometimes, late at night, I'd dream of Alex. In my dreams, he was always smiling that perfect smile, the one that had made me feel like the most special person in the world. I'd wake up hating myself for missing the man I thought he was. I had no way of knowing then that 8 years would pass before I saw that smile again. That when I did, it would be in an airport terminal thousands of miles from home. That the man wearing it would be standing with his new family, living a life he'd stolen from me. And I had no way of knowing that I would be ready for him. 8 years can dull even the sharpest pain. I had built a new life, one carefully constructed without any traces of Alex. I'd earned my master's degree in education, become a school principal, and even started dating again, though trust never came easily. The day everything changed, I was at LAX, waiting for a flight to a conference in Boston. My attention was caught by a child's laughter, bright and uninhibited in the way only young children can be. I looked up from my phone, and there he was. Alex stood about 30 feet away, holding hands with a boy who looked about 6. A woman in expensive yoga wear leaned against him, heavily pregnant, while a little girl clutched his other hand. They looked like a perfect family from a magazine cover. He hadn't changed much. A few gray hairs at his temples, laugh lines around his eyes, but still handsome in that polished way that had first attracted me. His suit probably cost more than I made in a month. Then he turned slightly, and our eyes met. I saw the moment recognition hit him. His face went pale, and he instinctively pulled his family closer, as if I were a threat. The woman, his new wife, noticed his tension and looked my way, confusion clear on her face. My hands didn't shake as I pulled up my phone. Years of therapy had prepared me for this moment, though I'd never truly believed it would come. I snapped several clear photos before he could react, then dialed a number I'd memorized long ago. Detective Rivera, remember that case from 8 years ago? I found him. Alex's expression shifted from shock to fear. He whispered something to his wife, who gathered the children and hurried toward their gate. But he stayed, watching me as I spoke to the detective who had never quite closed my case. When I hung up, he approached cautiously, like someone nearing a wild animal. "Sophie," he said softly, that familiar voice sending unwanted shivers down my spine. "Please, I have a family now." "You had a family before," I replied, my voice steady. "Or was I just a convenient mark?" He glanced nervously at the security cameras, the crowds flowing around us. "It wasn't like that. I was in trouble. I owed people money. Dangerous people. Disappearing was the only way out. And stealing every penny we had. Making me think you were dead. Was that the only way too?" "I can explain everything," he said, taking a step closer. "Maybe we could get coffee, talk somewhere private." "No," I cut him off firmly. "We're not going anywhere private. In fact, you might want to call your lawyer. The FBI is very interested in financial fraud cases involving fake deaths." His face hardened. "You don't want to do this, Sophie. Think about my kids." "I am thinking about them. I'm thinking about how they deserve to know who their father really is. Just like your wife deserves to know she married a con man." Security officers were approaching. I'd mentioned a possible fraud suspect when I called Rivera. Alex saw them too and straightened his designer jacket. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "I'm not the same person I was back then." I smiled, feeling calmer than I had in years. "That's where you're wrong, Alex. You're exactly the same person. You're still lying, still manipulating, still trying to protect yourself at everyone else's expense. The only difference is that this time, I can see right through you." The officers reached us. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Alex's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the cold calculation in his eyes that I'd been too blind to notice during our marriage. Then it was gone, replaced by a businessman's polite confusion. "There must be some mistake," he said smoothly. "I have a flight to catch." "No mistake, Mr. Chen. Or are you going by a different name these days?" His new wife was watching from their gate, concern evident on her face as she held their children close. My heart ached for them, innocent victims who would soon have their world shattered, just as mine had been. As the officers led Alex away, I saw him reach for his phone, probably calling the high-powered lawyers that our stolen money had bought. But it didn't matter. I had what I needed: proof that he was alive, evidence of his new identity, and enough photos to ensure he couldn't disappear again. Detective Rivera arrived within the hour, along with 2 FBI agents. They took my statement in a private office, documenting everything about Alex's new life that I'd observed. "He's using the name Alexander Whitman now," one agent told me. "Looks like he's been running a successful investment firm in Vancouver. Married, 2 kids, 3rd on the way. On paper, he's the perfect citizen." "He always was good at appearances," I said. As I watched them coordinate with Canadian authorities, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was satisfaction, yes, but also sadness for his children, and something else: relief. Relief that I could finally stop wondering, stop looking over my shoulder, stop feeling like a fool for not seeing through him sooner. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. "Did they get him?" "Yes," I replied. "It's finally over." But I had no idea then just how wrong I was. It wasn't over, it was just beginning. The arrest of Alexander Whitman, formerly known as Alex Chen, made international headlines. Dead husband found living double life. Multi-million-dollar fraud scheme exposed. The story was too sensational to ignore. His new wife, Rebecca, reached out to me through her lawyer. She wanted to meet, to understand. We arranged to talk at a neutral location, a hotel conference room with our attorneys present. She was beautiful, younger than me, and visibly pregnant. Her eyes were red from crying, but she held herself with dignity. "Did you know?" she asked immediately. "Was any part of your marriage real?" I shook my head. I'm still asking myself the same questions. I thought we were happy. I never saw it coming. She broke down then, her composed facade crumbling. 7 years, she sobbed. "We've been married 7 years. Our children. What do I tell our children?" The parallel wasn't lost on me. 7 years of marriage before he destroyed everything. I wondered if he'd planned to disappear on her too, eventually. The legal proceedings were complex, spanning multiple jurisdictions. The FBI uncovered a web of financial fraud stretching back decades. Alex hadn't just stolen from me. There were other victims, other schemes, other lives he'd ruined. His firm in Vancouver was built on stolen money and fake credentials. Clients' investments had been mismanaged, funds diverted to offshore accounts. The total amount stolen was staggering, over $50 million. Mark, his old friend who had helped fake his death, was found in Thailand and extradited. He broke down under questioning, revealing everything. The plan had been in motion for years before Alex died. They had set up shell companies, established false identities, created an entire shadow financial network. I testified at the trial, facing Alex across the courtroom. He looked smaller somehow, his expensive suits replaced by prison orange. The confident mask was gone, replaced by desperation as the evidence mounted. "Please," he begged when given a chance to speak. "I did it for my family. I needed to protect them." "Which family?" the prosecutor asked coldly. "The one you abandoned or the one you lied to?" The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The judge showed no mercy, citing the calculated nature of his crimes and the devastating impact on his victims. 25 years, she pronounced. No possibility of parole for 15. Rebecca divorced him immediately. We developed an unlikely friendship, supporting each other through the media circus and legal aftermath. Her children would need therapy just as I had. But they were young. They would recover, build new memories, understand eventually that their father's actions weren't their fault. The recovered money was divided among his victims. I received back most of what he'd stolen from me, plus interest and damages. But the real victory wasn't financial. I visited him once in prison, 6 months into his sentence, not for closure. I found that already. But to tell him something important. I forgive you, I said through the glass partition. Not for you, but for me. I'm done letting what you did define my life. He stared at me, that manipulative charm finally stripped away. How? He whispered. How can you forgive me? Because I'm stronger than what you did to me. I always was. You just helped me realize it. I stood up to leave, but paused. One more thing. Rebecca and I are starting a support group for victims of financial fraud. Your story is helping other people protect themselves. So in a way, you finally did something good. As I walked out of the prison, my phone buzzed. A text from my boyfriend James, a kind, honest man I'd met through my school's parent association. Proud of you, it read. Dinner tonight? I smiled, remembering how long it had taken me to trust again, to believe that love didn't have to be a weapon. James had been patient, understanding that my walls were built from hard experience. That evening over dinner, he proposed. The ring was simple, nothing like the flashy diamond Alex had used to win me. But James offered something far more valuable. Truth, partnership, and a love built on respect rather than deception. Yes, I said, tears of joy replacing all the tears of pain I shed over the years. Later that night, I stood on my balcony, looking at the city lights. I thought about the young woman I'd been devastated by betrayal, thinking her life was over. I wish I could tell her that the end of one story was just the beginning of a better one. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Support group meeting tomorrow. 5 new members. We're making a difference. I smiled, thinking about how life's darkest moments can lead to unexpected light. Alex had tried to destroy me, but instead he forced me to discover my own strength. His betrayal had led me to help others, to find real love, to become someone I was proud to be. The next morning, I walked into my school office, where pictures of my students lined the walls. Their trust and innocence reminded me daily why honesty matters, why integrity is worth protecting. A news alert popped up on my phone. Another financial fraud case exposed, another family devastated by lies. I added the victims' contact information to our support group list. Their healing journey was just beginning, but they wouldn't walk it alone. Because that's what survival teaches you, that your worst moments can become someone else's hope. That trust, once broken, can be rebuilt stronger. That love, real love, is worth the risk. Alex would serve his time, his children would grow up, and life would go on. But his greatest legacy wasn't the pain he caused. It was the strength he inadvertently gave to those he tried to break. Sometimes I still dream of that day in the airport, of seeing him with his new family. But now the dreams don't hurt. They remind me of how far I've come, of what I've built from the ashes of his deception. James and I married in a small ceremony, surrounded by real friends and honest love. Rebecca was my maid of honor, a twist of fate neither of us could have predicted. Her children call me Aunt Sophie, and they're growing up knowing that truth matters more than appearances. Life has a way of coming full circle. 8 years after my world shattered, I stood in front of our support group, sharing my story one last time before passing the leadership to Rebecca. Rock bottom, I told them, is where you discover what you're made of. And sometimes, the people who try to destroy you end up giving you your greatest strength.
The Manhattan sunset painted golden streaks across my parents' living room windows as I sat through another lecture about financial responsibility. Their 15th floor apartment in the Wellington had been the backdrop for these conversations for 20 years. Olivia, Mom sighed, arranging herself perfectly on her imported Italian sofa, 30 years old and still renting that tiny studio downtown. When are you going to invest in something real? I sipped my tea, hiding a smile behind the cup. My living situation is just fine, Mom. Fine. Dad scoffed from his leather armchair, rustling his Wall Street Journal. You work in real estate development, for heaven's sake. Yet you can't even afford to buy a proper apartment. If only they knew what I really did at Thompson Development Group, the company I'd quietly founded 5 years ago. At least we own our apartment, Mom bragged, gesturing around the space she'd spent a fortune decorating. The Wellington is the most prestigious address in the city. And we got in early, paid only $2 million. My phone buzzed. Another successful acquisition alert. I silenced it without looking. How much are you paying in rent for that closet you call an apartment? Dad pressed. You could be building equity, making connections in a proper building like this one. About that, I started, but Mom cut me off. Did you know the Hendersons just bought the unit next door? $7 million. That's what smart investing looks like, darling. Not throwing money away on rent in some downtown hovel. I checked my watch. The timing was perfect. Speaking of investments, I said carefully, have you received the new building ownership notice yet? Dad frowned. What notice? The Wellington changed hands last month, I explained, reaching into my simple leather bag. All residents should have been notified of the new ownership structure. Impossible, Mom declared. The board would have informed us. We're founding members. Actually, I pulled out a thick folder. The board voted on it 3 weeks ago. Unanimously approved the sale to Thompson Development Group. Dad's newspaper crinkled as his hands tightened. Thompson Development? That new company that's been buying up premium properties across Manhattan. The very same, I smiled, opening the folder. Would you like to see the property deed? Why would we want to see? Mom stopped abruptly as I laid the documents on her precious coffee table. There, in clear legal language, was the truth. The Wellington, all 35 floors of Manhattan's most prestigious address, now belonged to Thompson Development Group. CO, Olivia Thompson. This is a joke, Dad sputtered, reaching for the papers. You can't possibly own this building? I finished for him. Actually, I do. Along with 12 other premium properties across the city. That tiny studio downtown you mock? It's my company's development lab, where we design the future of luxury real estate. Mom's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. But you're always complaining about rent. Market research, I explained, pulling out more documents. I needed to understand the rental market from the inside. While you were bragging about buying in early at $2 million, I was quietly acquiring the entire block. The Wellington is just the latest addition to my portfolio. Dad's face had gone pale as he read through the ownership papers. Thompson Development Group. That's the company that just bought the Plaza Hotel. And the Cameron Tower and the West Side Luxury Complex. I nodded. Would you like to see those deeds too? Mom's hands shook as she reached for her phone, no doubt about to Google the company she'd just discovered her financially irresponsible daughter owned. So, I continued, enjoying the stunned silence, about that rent. As the new owner, I'm adjusting the rates to reflect current market value. Your $2 million investment was smart, but it doesn't guarantee preferred pricing anymore. You're raising our rent? Dad choked out. By 40%, I confirmed, sliding over the new lease agreement. Don't worry, I'm offering all original residents a special family discount. Though in your taste. I smiled, remembering years of lectures about financial responsibility. I might need to review that policy. The sunset had deepened, casting long shadows across the apartment my parents had been so proud of. Now they sat in shocked silence, realizing their daughter owned not just this unit, but the entire building and much of the surrounding neighborhood. The new lease terms begin next month, I said, standing up. Oh, and the renovation schedule is included in your packet. We're upgrading all units to smart home technology. My downtown hovel has been testing the systems for the past year. Olivia, Mom whispered, her voice unsteady, all those times we told you to invest in property? I replied, gathering my things. I just thought bigger than a single apartment. As I headed for the door, my door technically, since I owned every inch of the Wellington now, I turned back one last time. By the way, the Henderson's $7 million unit? I'm turning it into a communal workspace for residents. Prime real estate shouldn't sit empty just for status. Behind me, I heard Dad's newspaper fall to the floor as the full impact of their new reality sank in. The Wellington's prestigious lobby buzzed with chaos the next morning. Residents clustered around the newly installed digital announcement board, watching in horror as it displayed Thompson Development Group's complete renovation plans for their beloved building. Smart home integration, sustainable energy systems, community spaces? Mrs. Henderson's voice carried across the marble floors. But what about our exclusivity? I stepped out of my private elevator, installed last week without anyone noticing, wearing the same cheap clothes my mother had criticized at dinner. The lobby fell silent. "Good morning," I smiled, watching recognition dawn on faces that had previously ignored me. "I trust everyone received their new lease agreements?" "Olivia," Mrs. Henderson stammered. You're the new owner?" "The very same," I confirmed, pulling up the building's specs on the digital board. "Today we're beginning phase 1 of our modernization project. The Wellington is about to become Manhattan's first fully integrated smart luxury residence." The crowd erupted with questions and protests. My mother appeared from the regular elevator looking like she hadn't slept. "The fitness center is becoming a co-working space?" someone called out. "But where will we hold our private yoga sessions?" "In the new rooftop wellness center," I replied, switching to that section of the plans. "The one with retractable glass walls and vertical gardens. You know, from that little sustainability project Mom said I was wasting time on." Mom's face flushed as her friends turned to stare at her. For years, she'd dismissed my environmental design studies as another example of her daughter's impractical dreams. But the exclusivity. Mrs. Henderson tried again. "Will be redefined," I cut in smoothly. "True luxury isn't about keeping people out. It's about creating spaces that enhance lives. The Wellington will set new standards for sustainable luxury living." My phone buzzed with another acquisition alert. 3 more buildings added to the portfolio overnight. The Wellington was just the beginning. "Your coffee, Miss Thompson." My assistant appeared with my usual cup. "The mayor's office called. They want to discuss expanding the smart building initiative across the city." The lobby fell even quieter. Mom's hands clutched her designer bag as she watched her neighbors realize just how thoroughly they'd underestimated her daughter. "The renovation schedule is non-negotiable," I announced, addressing the growing crowd. "However, residents who sign the new lease early will have priority choice of upgraded amenities, including," I smiled at Mrs. Henderson, "the private sky gardens I designed while living in my humble downtown studio." Dad emerged from the elevator next, his usual confident stride faltering as he saw the crowd gathered around his landlord, his daughter. "The property value," he began weakly, "will triple once renovations are complete," I finished. "Thompson Development Group's last 3 projects saw 400% returns. Not bad for someone you said would never own property." The digital board switched to a live feed of Thompson Development's other properties across Manhattan. Each one a testament to my vision of sustainable luxury, each one worth more than the Wellington's residents had ever imagined possible. "But we're founding members," someone protested. "We have rights." "You have leases," I corrected gently, "which, as of last month, are held by my company. Don't worry, I'm not planning to evict anyone, though the new rent calculations might encourage some natural turnover." Mom stepped forward, finally finding her voice. "Olivia, all these years, while we were bragging about our $2 million apartment, I was building a real estate empire," I nodded. "One that's now worth more than every apartment in this building combined." The lobby's marble floors reflected the morning sun as I pulled up more designs on the digital board. Solar panels disguised as architectural features, vertical farms integrated into balconies, and community spaces that would make the Wellington the most coveted address in the city, for entirely new reasons. "Now," I said, checking the time, "if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the City Planning Commission. We're discussing implementing my sustainability designs across all premium properties in Manhattan." As I turned to leave, Dad called out, "Why didn't you tell us?" I paused, looking back at the parents who'd spent years doubting me. "Would you have believed that your financially irresponsible daughter was secretly becoming the largest luxury property owner in Manhattan?" The lobby remained silent, the residents of New York's most exclusive address finally realizing that true power doesn't always look like they expected. 3 months later, I stood in my parents' apartment, now transformed into the Wellington's show unit. The smart walls glowed softly, responding to natural light. The vertical garden on their former status symbol balcony bloomed with organic herbs. "It's beautiful," Mom admitted, touching the living wall. "Nothing like what we imagined luxury could be." "That was always the problem," I replied, adjusting the environmental controls with a gesture. You were looking backward at old definitions of success. I was building the future. Dad stood by the window watching solar panels track the sun, invisible from the street but powering the entire building. The property value has quadrupled, he said quietly. And the waiting list is 3 years long, I added, pulling up the building's stats. Turns out true luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about innovation. The apartment's AI assistant smoothly adjusted the lighting as evening approached. Mom's designer furniture had been replaced with sustainable pieces I'd designed myself, each worth more than her entire former collection. We were wrong, Dad finally said. About everything. Not everything, I smiled, showing them the latest acquisition papers. You taught me to invest in property. I just invested in all of it. As we stood in the transformed space, watching the sunset through self-tinting windows, Mom touched my arm. Do we still have to pay the new rent? Of course, I laughed softly. But I'll tell you what, I'll accept your old apartment as partial payment for all those years of doubting me.